The U.S. government shutdown is sending ripples through global markets, from missing data and farmer bailout plans to shifting grain and oilseed prices. Is this the calm before the storm? I'm Johanna Bota, and joining me today is StoneX's VP of Clearing and Execution Sales, Bertrand Oesterle. Welcome, Bertrand.
Morning.
So, the U.S. government shutdown is still happening. How has the market been reacting?
So it's been a week without some data, usual data that we would get. So there's no USDA report potentially tomorrow. There's been no export sales. There's been no CFTC for the spec positions. There's no farm payroll, or non-farm payroll, I should say. So it's a lot of missing data, so we're slightly in the dark. So the first reaction, the market is a lot quieter. The volume across the board, across exchanges in grains and oilseeds has gone down because people are less active while we're in the data dark, if I may call it that way. Then we've seen something else. People are trying to limit their positions for when everything comes back to normal and for when data starts to come in and there may be a surprise. So we're seeing a lot of EFPs, so exchange for physicals, a lot of AAs against actuals, or a lot of EFSEs, exchange for swaps. So there's a desire from clients to be cautious in this environment of no data by reducing positions. Now, when we listen to Trump seems to be optimistic about the fact that the government shutdown is not going to last for long. Some people are saying it might last 2 weeks, maybe more, maybe less. Trump is saying it should be off pretty soon. But then he's added another twist. He might take the opportunity to look at the government shutdown as to how many employees the government has and maybe trim the number of government employees. That could be an issue if some USDA staff get made redundant. So the quality of the USDA may be affected. We'll have to wait and see. So as you said in your intro, we don't know quite yet what's going to happen. It's maybe the calm before the storm.
Okay, another thing that's happening is last week we talked about a potential Trump farmer bailout, but there's still just rumors because nothing has been formally announced. So how has the market been reacting to those rumors?
So Trump's been talking about a farmer bailout for about 2 weeks. And there's no formal proposal, but the market is taking that it is going to be a $10 billion to $15 billion farmer bailout. The reactions have been mostly of threefolds, and it is interesting how people are reacting to that potential help to farmers. First of all, people are saying that if a farmer bailout is potentially on the table, that means that maybe Trump is not so convinced that he can get a deal with China. So that's the first reaction. The second reaction is to say, how will farmers react once they've got the state money? And there, it's been a little bit difficult because people are saying that maybe farmers will get the bailout money and they will sit on that money and not sell their crop. So it could make the farmer selling retention worse. And it is at a time when we already know that storage is difficult. So we know that the US are 19% behind the pace on their US export of soybeans. So there's plenty of soybeans still sitting around. The farmers are currently harvesting the new crop. So the soybean crop is some 39–40% harvested. The corn crop is about a third harvested. So there's plenty of crop around. So farmer retention is a risk, but at the same time, there's not the capacity to store to justify that farmer retention. So here, two very conflicting ideas about whether or not farmers are going to sit on their crop or not.
Right.
Also, the other bit is how a farmer bailout could affect the next crop, i.e., if farmers get money, whatever happens, they may have a reaction to say, I'll plant as much as I can, I'll get money anyway. Or it could be a problem in terms of input, i.e., I'm going to get bailed out, so I'm not going to make an effort to use fertilizers or pesticides as much as I would normally because good or bad crop or good or bad price, I'm going to get state money. So there is a kind of worry in the market that maybe a farmer bailout for the new crop may affect quantity or quality. And the farmer bailout discussions also comes at an interesting time because at the same time, Trump is saying that he may cut the
Green energy
projects by 12 billion. So it's like taking from one hand to giving to another hand.
Okay, so can we rewind a bit? The first thing you said was that a potential farmer bailout most likely means that there's no deal with China. Can you explain that a little bit more?
Yes, I get what you're asking. So Trump has made it clear 2 weeks ago that he will put soybean at the forefront of his discussions with Xi when they are supposed to meet at the APEC meeting in Asia at the end of October. It's supposed to be on the 22nd of October in Vietnam. So presumably, Trump is saying, I'm going to get a deal. But if the bailout is still on, it puts that deal in doubt. And also, it's the timing of that deal which could be difficult. We've got a window of opportunity for the US to sell to China from September to January. If we have to wait all the way to the end of October to get started, it means that we only have November, December to see the shipments going. So it makes a very tight window for exporters to get that soybean, send it to China within 2 months. Also, what makes it even more difficult is that Brazil will be back on in January. The crop, which is currently being planted in Brazil, is 9% planted already. It's above last year 4%. So it's a crop that is starting to be planted quick, which may develop quicker, which may get harvested in more volume earlier. So January, the Brazilians might come in to harvest a higher volume than they would last year, for example. The other bit as well, the crop in Brazil is expected to be a new record. The estimates we've seen are massive. The range is very wide so far this season. It's 166.5 to 182.9 million tons. But the current consensus is around the 178 million ton mark, which would be a new record. So we're in a situation where Trump might get a deal, but that deal is well into that window of opportunity. It leaves little time for the end of that window of opportunity at a time when the Brazilians are planting fast and may get a big crop, providing that La Niña doesn't come to affect that crop.
Okay, so that's what's happening in the US. I want to move over to Europe now. With everything that's happening in the French government, how has the euro reacted, and has it influenced Euronext grain and oilseed prices?
So the crisis is France.
Yeah.
The government has basically resigned after 14 hours of being in place, and it is a political mayhem. What does it mean? It means that the second largest economy has got political issues, and it puts pressure on the euro. So the euro over the past few days has fallen, and a weaker euro should be supporting Paris wheat, Paris maize, Paris rapeseed. What we've seen is rapeseed benefiting, mostly because soybean has been helped by those talks of bailouts and it has fed into rapeseed. But we've seen that wheat has struggled to keep up the euro momentum. And part of it is because a weaker euro means a higher dollar. A higher dollar means a weaker Chicago. And there's been some spillover pressure from a lower Chicago wheat and corn into Paris commodities.
But if rapeseed has been able to benefit from a weaker euro, why hasn't Paris wheat?
So there's been other news in Paris wheat. So there's been some updates in terms of output estimates worldwide. So we've seen updates about Argentina, Australia, Canada. So for Argentina, the Buenos Aires Grain Exchange is looking at 22 million tons. They're saying that it could be a near record in terms of potential yields in wheat. And that's despite rain, which some are saying is good and some are saying that might be a touch excessive. So we'll have to keep an eye on those. And then we've had some updates from Canada where the crop was estimated by AIRSEC at some 36.5 million tons. That's within the range of 35 to 36.6, but it's the top of the range. And we also had updates from Australia where AIRSEC put a crop at 34.2 million tons. It's again between the 33, 35 million ton range we had, so it's towards the top of the range in a way. And it's despite the bits of dryness in southern Australia. So generally speaking, those three areas of the world, some big estimates. Also, we've had some updates, despite the fact that the US are not producing official figures, about the planting in the US, which should be around the halfway mark. So winter wheat is 50% planted. And then similarly in Ukraine, the crop is almost to the halfway mark planted. It's 49.1% for the winter wheat. And it's on a larger area, 5.2 million hectares. That's some 9% more than last year.
Okay, so supply looks good, but what about demand? Because last week we were talking about decent demand, but has anything changed?
So demand, like the rest, like I mentioned initially, we see a bit of a slowdown in the market, less volume. So demand, like production or merchants, has been quieter, but there's been some decent tenders. We've seen, for example, Saudi Arabia buying 455,000 tons of wheat. We've seen also Bangladesh buying 220,000 tons of US wheat, and that buying is basically part of the overall deal that Bangladesh said they would buy US origin anyway. Also, what else did we see? We Intercéréal in France saying that they think that France has an opportunity to export wheat to Morocco and to potentially meet 2/3 of the imports from Morocco. It's a big figure, it's some 3.5 million tons. But what has come from the market is doubt. The market is saying the US in the first quarter of this season have exported a lot of wheat, but at the same time, the Russians in the first quarter haven't exported as much wheat as last year in the first quarter of the season, some 31% less than the previous quarter. So there's doubt in the market that Morocco may not be able to look at the US so much as an alternative to French wheat, but they might be able to look at Russia as an alternative to French wheat because there's still a lot of Russian wheat available for the rest of the season. So the market is basically saying it's an optimistic figure from France. It may be difficult to realize it if Russia becomes more aggressive. So generally speaking, that has contained Paris. Paris had made a low of 185 basis deck, and we've barely been able to remain above it. We're in the 187, 189 range, and we're closer to 187 currently. So that euro help has not been felt because of the elements I've just mentioned.
And before we wrap up, what's happening with the DEC March spread in Paris wheat and the expected fund roll?
So DEC March has been interesting over the past week, and it's been the focus of a lot of talk. We've been around the minus 650 area for quite some time. We've rallied to minus 425 over the past few days, and everyone is saying, who's buying? So there's a bit of speculation as who's doing what. Some in the market are saying that maybe it's some of those trade houses that had accompanied the wave of spec selling and which are being cautious ahead of the fund roll. And others are saying that maybe it is actual fund roll, very early fund roll. It could be difficult to assess in the sense that the crucial date remains the 17th of November when the December options go to expiration. And usually the fund roll is expected to be a couple of weeks before that to a few days after. So we would expect the fund roll to be around the 3rd to the 20th of November, not this early. So it's going to be interesting to watch over the couple next week, I mean today and next week, what the Euronext COT is going to show us. We know that for the moment the specs remain very short, especially the funds, some minus 290,000 lots. And at the same time, the OI in December remains very firm. It has come off, but it's still some just over 380,000 lots.
Bertrand, thank you so much for your time. And thank you for watching. For more financial content, don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.